Welcome to University Drive, your pathway to the transformational work of University of the Bahamas. Our goal is to build a better Bahamas by shaping tomorrow's leaders today, finding solutions to challenges, and forging new opportunities for growth. University Drive, where faculty, staff, students, and alumni travel the road of progress together with you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to University Drive. I'm your host, Tamika Lundy, and joining us for this episode is the president of University of the Bahamas, Dr. Rodney P. Smith. Dr. Smith, hello, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. The last time you were here was more than a year ago. Thank you for coming back to us.
Thank you, Mrs. Lundy. It's a pleasure to be here, and a lot has happened in a year.
Absolutely, a lot has happened. How have you been doing?
I've been doing well. I've been making sure that I'm remaining strong emotionally, physically, mentally. So I've gotten myself into a routine of prayers and meditations, followed by Spanish lessons, followed by exercise, and getting ready for my day each and every day.
Wow, that sounds great. You've really taken the time to focus on you and your mental, psychological, and emotional health during this period, right?
Yeah, at a time like this, that is key. That is key to surviving. That is key to getting through this pandemic. Not just the social distancing, but also being able to take care of yourself.
I was thinking about the year that was, and the word stretch kept coming to my mind, a period of stretching for all of us as individuals, as a country, as the university, I would imagine as well, stretching and transforming. The last time you were here, we were just in the beginning phase of the pandemic. It's been a year already, and I know that the university has been in remote operations and it's really had to stretch and grow. What is the status now? How has it been? How has the university fared?
I think that in comparison to other institutions on a global level, University of the Bahamas has come out really in the top 10%. And I say this because we were able to, and our faculty and our students and staff were able to adjust in a very, very short time frame to teaching online, to remote operations. And it's because we had the mechanisms in place prior to the lockdown, prior to the pandemic. And so we were able to transition very quickly. In essence, we kind of moved ahead by about 10 years in terms of what we had expected to do with technology. So overall now for the past year or so, I think we've adjusted very well. During the summer of last summer, our teachers, all of our faculty members did the online certification courses. And so they're all certified in online teaching as well. I think that when we look back and when we look at lessons learned and when we looked at how we've adjusted, it has not been easy. It has been stressful in some instances, has been challenging. We found out that we had so many students without the use of technology or access to the technology. So we had a campaign going to try to have tablets and laptops donated and distributed to students, faculty, and staff who did not have any. So we've met the challenges, we've adjusted, and we continue to adjust every day.
I see the university as a beacon of hope and light for the country and for so many individuals. And having to go through a crisis like this, you're really talking about people going through a crisis. But when you are a university, and specifically to you, when you are the leader of a university, of so many people, what are your guiding principles? What are you guided by? How do you stay in focus as the president? And how does the university stay in focus and on track and on course when confronted with such a crisis as the COVID-19 pandemic and everything that it's caused?
Well, I think for me, it's a blessing that I used to be a practicing psychologist years ago. And when you go through a crisis of this nature or of any major crisis, particularly one that affects the world like this pandemic is doing, the leader of the institution has to remember several things, I believe. One is, of course, to be supportive of the people of the institution to be understanding, to be accessible, and to really, really demonstrate compassion. I think it's important to let everyone know that you know that they're going through a stressful time. You know that it's challenging. You know that they're dealing with multiple issues at the same time. A lot of people are dealing with trying to educate their children at home and trying to perform their jobs simultaneously. And then also we have individuals who are trying to balance time, manage their time, trying not to be working till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on the computer. I try not to be working all day Saturday and all day Sunday on the computer. Somehow, you know, when you're working remotely or when you're working online, you lose track of time. And so it's important to keep reminding individuals not to allow themselves to fall into those traps.
So being supportive and encouraging has been very necessary, right?
Extremely, and also be, you know, be accessible, because I have had individuals who have made appointments and called and say they need to talk to me, you know, in private about some things, and so you have to be accessible to people as well, even though we are not face to face. The same accessibility that I would have had in open office, open door hours at the college, at the campus, are the same things that I maintain as well through Zoom meetings. So that accessibility is really important, and showing of compassion and support, understanding and encouragement, like you said.
So let's talk about that balance. And I'm very glad that you referred to your background in psychology and counseling, because going through a traumatic experience is something that you can't really ignore, even with the professionals that you expect to perform. So you have to give some sort of leeway and recognize everything that individuals are going through, their mental, emotional, and psychological health, while still expecting individuals to perform and do their duties and responsibilities. You have to be reminded that you're going through a period of difficulty. How has the university addressed the whole balance that should be struck in that regard? I do
Well,
recall that that the university also brought on a mental health consultant.
that's correct. That's correct. I was just going to say that we did hire Dr. Tim Barrett and his agency of mental health consultants to work with the university. And our faculty, staff, and students have actually been taking full advantage of that opportunity to be able to have sessions with Dr. Barrett. And so he has been very, very busy. And that has really, really relieved a lot of the stress, I think, on a lot of individuals, particularly right after Christmas. Because once we made the announcement that of his availability, and then we published his contact information, he reported that he got a lot of phone calls, and this was right after Christmas. And I think people were extremely stressed out, and they really needed to talk. But he has developed a steady flow in terms of dealing with or assisting faculty, staff, and students, and administration, by the way. But you know, as the president of the institution, one of the things that I have to always keep in mind too is modeling behavior. So I can tell people what they need to do, but I need to do it myself, and encourage my direct reports to do it as well. And that is, you know, you have your meetings, you have your one-on-one meetings, but you also have to get to know people a whole lot better too, because it helps. You know, you have some staff members who are living alone, and they might have a pet. So it's good to really get to know the name of the pet, you know, how the pet's doing. You socialize when you have your meetings in your one-on-one and Zoom calls too. And I encourage my direct reports, my vice presidents, to do the same thing with their staff members, to get to know them. So I think over the past year, believe it or not, we've actually gotten a lot closer in terms of not only how we work together, but I think we've gotten also a lot more productive in what we've been able to accomplish.
What I hear you addressing is really creating a culture of kindness and compassion.
Yeah, and support and encouragement. That's what's important, particularly during a time like what we're going through now, where the stress level is so high. The need for crisis management is there. The need to be able to manage ourselves and to survive this is there. And being humane with each other and more understanding of each other, I think is very, very helpful, and helps the institution to survive and help us to go from day to day and to provide the highest quality of education for our students. And our students need the opportunity to talk as well. And so, you know, a lot of our faculty members have stepped up and been there for students as well.
And it's so important when you're going through a period of crisis and uncertainty and anxiety to keep people focused and to really bring into clear view the strengths, the milestones, the accomplishments that are happening, even in the face of uncertainty. So I would imagine that that would be the same for the university. Are you able to point to what's happened over the last year that you've been particularly proud of?
Well, over the last year, in addition to the transformation that is taking place, the digital transformation that has taken place, we have been, a lot of our vice presidents who are responsible for the creation of policies and procedures have been working steadily in that direction. I think a lot of policies have been not only drafted, but also reviewed and approved. The Board of Trustees has made significant strides as well in developing the bylaws for the Board of Trustees and developing policies for the Board of Trustees. The Academic Senate has not only established a strong foundation, but is highly functional and highly effective moving forward. So a lot of things have actually happened in terms of improving internal efficiencies and effectiveness, basically in a sense of continuous improvement. So we've been moving forward. Of course, you know, we have the strategic plan as our guide, and the strategic plan is really based on establishing a stronger foundation for the University of the Bahamas. And that foundation is based on the policies and the procedures that must be in place. So we've been able to get a lot of work done in that direction.
I'm glad that you mentioned the strategic plan because I'm curious about the relevance of it and how useful it is or has been, and whether there would need to be any kind of amendment or adjustment to the strategic plan. Because I recall that it came out before the COVID-19 pandemic, and I know that there's been quite a bit of pivoting, and I'm wondering do you intend to make any adjustments or changes to that, or was it built for tough, as some people like to say, and did it anticipate having to pivot to this degree?
Yeah, I think the advantage that we have with regards to the strategic plan for the University of the Bahamas is that this is the first strategic plan for the University of the Bahamas. And it's entitled Building a Strong Foundation for the Future. And so a lot of what's in this first strategic plan is not what other institutions would normally put in their strategic plan, whereby they might already have a strong policies and procedures foundation, so they build on top of that. What we're doing as a university, our strategic plan has examined very closely what are the policies and procedures that need to be in place for us to move to the next level. And the next level is accreditation, international accreditation. So we have not had to make any major adjustments to this strategic plan because the majority of it is putting the policies and procedures in place in order for us to get to the next level. There have been some instances where some of our goals and objectives for 2019, 2020 were not achieved, but those goals and objectives were not achieved as a result of things like not being on campus, students not having access to the campus facilities, etc. And so some things have been delayed. But what we will do, we have, in addition to having this strategic plan, we also have annual operational plans that are established in August based on the strategic plan. What are the goals and objectives for that particular year? And we have a process whereby our budget hearings are held in November, December. Preparation for the next year, the year after, is also based on goals and objectives for that particular year. So we have a set pace going, and so we're not really making any adjustments to the current strategic plan 2019-2024. Only perhaps moving some of those goals and objectives back by 1 year.
So when you think through and when you talk about the impact of the university, its mission, I have a view, and that view is that the university should not be an ivory tower, nor should it or can or nor should it grow in isolation. It needs the support of the community because it is impacting the community and the country on a national level. How has the community support been for the university, especially when you think about the university's mission, its impact on national development, and how it is supposed to be impacting research, education, innovation, and service? How has the community support been and outreach and connection?
I think that the support is growing. I don't think it's where it should be or where it actually needs to be at this point in time. But I think I've seen it grow over the past year, 2 years actually. So I think the community support is growing. In the past 6 to 9 months in particular, I've seen more grants, research grants and implementation grants coming into the university through the Government and Public Policy Institute, through the School of Science, through the Education Department, through the Provost, through the VP for Academic Affairs Office. So I've seen an increase in implementation grants. I've seen an increase in sponsored research over the past 2 years, and this is a very, very positive sign. I've also, we just finished UB Fit over the weekend, and UB Fit has exceeded our expectations. Initially, I think there was a 150 to 250 anticipated, and the participation was well over 350 persons from Canada, from the United States, throughout the Bahamas, and throughout the corporate sector here in Nassau as well. So I think that the community support is growing. The area that I would be very, very concerned with when it comes to research is that we exercise extreme caution when we pass legislation, when we pass national policies, that we do not hamper research at the University of the Bahamas, that we do not jeopardize academic freedom and shared governance of a university structure, of a university system. I think we have to be very, very cautious about that.
Academic freedom and research are fundamental to the Academy and to the University of the Bahamas. And I know that through faculty and through staff as well, the university has really been bringing its expertise to bear on the creation of knowledge. Tell us a little bit about how the research undertakings have been progressing in relation to the last point that you made.
Well, I think that we have 6 new labs in the Small Island Sustainability Research Complex. And under the leadership of that research complex, more scientific research grants have been coming to the university, not only through funding agencies, private funding agencies, but also through government agencies, as well as through the IDB. Assisting with things like reforestry in Grand Bahama, assisting with things like doing research on herbal medicines. Also, one of the projects we're working on is a aquaponics farm in the back of the Culinary Institute. But in addition to that, the Government and Public Policy Institute has also been very, very active with the Office of the Prime Minister in digitization surveys. We've also been working very closely with the SBDC. We've also been working closely with the Wani Lustra Foundation, with the Exuma Chamber of Commerce, etc. So we're getting more and more participation, more and more research in those areas as well. That again, I emphasize the point that we have to be very, very careful that we do not jeopardize academic freedom and the freedom of the institution to conduct research. Universities are focus on discovery. Universities are knowledge producers. Universities have been proven throughout the centuries to being the nucleus of economic development throughout the community, throughout the country. So the stronger the University of the Bahamas becomes, the more stable and more sustainable will be the economic future of the Bahamas itself.
Continuing down that road then, what kind of enabling environment does the University of the Bahamas need to operate in order to create the culture, the foundation, and the environment that stimulates vibrancy in research? What kind of enabling environment does UB need?
We need to protect the two basic tenets in higher learning and higher education. One, of course, is shared governance. The other one is academic freedom. I believe that the university has come a long way in creating an environment of shared governance in the sense that the Board of Trustees knows its role to play. The administrative structure knows its role to play. The academic senate, representing the faculty members and the curriculum, knows its role to play. And the unions know their role in terms of protecting the employment rights of their members. So I think the shared governance is across the board. I think it's getting stronger and stronger and more respectful of each other and more collaborative. Academic freedom is what I'm worried about, because academic freedom ties into the research, the creation of new knowledge, discovery, which is the very basis, the very foundation of universities. And if that is threatened, then not only the university, but faculty members being able to do that research, be able to produce new knowledge, to be able to engage in discovery with their students is also threatened. And the future of the country becomes threatened as well.
Okay, that is actually a good place to take a break. We have as our guest, President of University of the Bahamas, Dr. Rodney Smith, and we're talking about fostering resiliency in the academy, transforming in a time of pandemic. We'll take our first break and be back after this.
To protect yourself and others from COVID-19, stay home as much as possible and avoid close contact with others. Wear a mask that covers your nose and mouth when you leave home. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Practice social distancing. If you must leave home, stay at least 6 feet away from other people and disinfect items you must touch. Limit in-person contact as much as possible. To prevent the spread of COVID-19 if you're sick, avoid public transportation, ride-sharing, or taxis. Stay home if you're sick, except to get medical care. Remember to call ahead first. Separate yourself from other people and pets in your home. Everyone is at risk of getting COVID-19. Older adults and people of any age who have serious underlying medical conditions may be at higher risk for more severe illness. This message is brought to you by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and University of the Bahamas.
Welcome back to University Drive. We have President of University of the Bahamas, Dr. Rodney Smith, joining us, and we're talking about building a resilient university, a resilient academy. So, President, let's continue to talk about this notion of community and community within the context of the university being a leader, an incubator for thought leadership, for enlightenment. You know, the world is changing, and the university has been inserting itself in guiding the transformation that this country needs. How has that been happening? What is the score on that? What is the status on that? The university as a leader?
I think if you look back at the research efforts and the implementation grants I mentioned earlier, that's significant. If you look at the level of participation that University of the Bahamas faculty members have had with regards to even understanding the pandemic and understanding and participating in the vaccination process, I think that's significant. I think if you look to participate on national committees, I think that's significant. So the university does have a hand in a lot of areas across the country. I don't think that it's at the level that it should be. I don't think that the university's intellectual resources has been maximized. I think that there is still a perception that I hate to say this, but the perception that foreign is better. I still think there's a perception of us not recognizing the tremendous intellectual capital that comes from the University of the Bahamas, comes from Bahamians. I don't think we're there. I think we're still a far ways away. I think that a lot has happened as a result of the pandemic. I mentioned, for instance, that we've jumped ahead in the use of technology by about 10 years because it's always been a part of the mission to provide access to higher education for all Bahamians, no matter where they are. So I think that the pandemic has helped us to move further ahead in that. I am concerned that there is still that mental structure, that block, so to speak, that people want to return to what they used to do before. And people still see the institution as an Ivy League structure. The pandemic has redefined that on a global basis, to the point whereby we should never, ever go back to what we did before solely. We should be hybrid, we should be blended, we should be able to offer courses, not only courses, but entire degree programs online. We should be looking at a model of face-to-face and online degree programs moving forward, and giving people the option. And that option would really include creating learning centers not only around the country, on different uninhabited islands in the Bahamas, where people can actually be counseled, be advised. We need to be looking at prior learning assessments. We need to be looking at individual personalized learning packages for individuals as well. We need to expand our thinking now in a way whereby the technology has opened up new doors for us to do so. We also, and I said this before, but people think I'm talking about another 1,000 years from now when I talk about augmented virtual reality. We're doing virtual labs right now. And when I say AVR is going to propel the delivery of education, delivery of training into the 21st century the way it's going to move going forward. And you will remember me saying that today. Years from now, when AVP is in universities and colleges or in learning centers all around the world, you'll remember we talked about that.
So you've referred several times to this technological revolution that's happening at the university. How will the university leverage that to make concrete steps towards, or concrete inroads towards, extending access to higher learning for people throughout this country?
That's what I mean when I say create learning centers. Because learning centers, if you create learning centers on the different islands, you also create access to advisement, you create access to counseling, you create access to academic assessment of people's experiences. PLA, prior learning assessment, is if you are working in the hotel industry or you're working in a particular industry all of your life, but you never had a chance to get a college degree, your experiences should be able to count towards a degree. If you are working full time and you have your prior learning assessment done, which we don't do in the Bahamas at all, by the way, and calculate how many credits you can get from that life experience toward a degree, then you are already on your way towards achieving a degree. Those are the kinds of things we could benefit from, because with the use of technology now, we can make education, we can make learning, we can make training for the future, for the 21st century, for a technological world, more technological world, more accessible to people all over the country and throughout the region, entire region.
Mhm. It's been interesting to see how this pandemic has impacted colleges and universities locally, nationally, and abroad. And one of the recurrent conversations and commentary I see happening relates to whether a traditional university education is still relevant and necessary. Because during the pandemic and when there was that kind of suspension of services and contact and commerce, a lot of the essential services jobs that continued, people are saying that they didn't require higher learning skills, so therefore university education is not really necessary. Is that a correct statement to make?
I think it's an incorrect statement to make. I think that we are experiencing a transformation in the modality, the delivery modalities that we're experiencing in education, and I keep saying education and training, because all areas do not require a degree in something. However, we are approaching a time in higher education where higher education is going to transform, but it's going to transform to meet the needs of a workforce in which the jobs are still in the process of being created. And that's why I say you may not necessarily need a degree in certain areas, but you see, we're at the point whereby people are going to start creating their own learning packages, their own educational programs, so to speak. But if you have access to mentors, to professionals who are helping to guide them, then they could assess where they are now in terms of their own learning, their own experiences, and what do they need to do moving forward? What do they need exposure to? What courses they might need in order to achieve the goals that they have for themselves. So as we transform higher education into the future, and I'm speaking globally right now, I'm not speaking just for the Bahamas. As we transform higher education for the future, more and more non-traditional age students, or the adult population, are going to be seeking education and training in order to adjust in a new technological world. And that's where the university, that's why the higher education institutions need to also be able to innovate, need to be also flexible enough to adjust to meet the needs of this new population that's coming up, population of students.
I know that you hold a position. I know that you're a part of quite a number of international higher education bodies and associations and the like. What are the key things that these organizations and associations have identified as the trends to watch, to be aware of, or the aspects or areas to pay attention to when it comes to developing the kind of resiliency within the academy that's needed?
To be honest with you, the terms I mentioned earlier about being innovative and flexible, being innovative in the sense that we're not afraid to explore various modalities of delivering education and training, but also being flexible in the sense that we need to be open-minded enough to recognize that we have to move away from the traditional faculty member standing in front of the classroom. We have to move away from um, um, thinking that the faculty member has all of the knowledge and the student doesn't bring any knowledge to the table. We're entering a stage in higher education now where we have to recognize the value of the knowledge the student brings to the table, as well as the value of what the faculty member brings to the table. So there has to be mutual learning and mutual teaching. So we're looking more and more at faculty as facilitators and mentors, because to be honest with you, it's the same students that are sitting in the classrooms, the same students that are taking the courses online, are the ones who are going to be creating those new jobs of the future that we can't even begin to imagine yet, that we don't even know what questions to ask yet. Those are the people who are going to be creating those new jobs. They're going to be defining the future each and every day. So they do bring something to the table. They do bring knowledge to the table. We have to be careful that we do not put chains around their minds, so to speak. We have to be careful that we don't limit them or restrict them from expanding their God-given intellect.
So the university will be heading into commencement very soon. And I know that one of the things that's really been difficult to come to terms with has been the physical distancing. That's been a really big adjustment, particularly for students. Especially when you think of the graduates who are heading out now, who will embrace their graduation status soon. They really miss being able to mark and commemorate their achievements in the traditional way. What would you tell the graduates who are coming out for spring right now about how precious and special it is to be able to complete this milestone in this particular era?
You know, it's always preferable, and I say this to every single student the students who went through the virtual commencement last year, and the students who are getting ready to graduate this year. It's a very, very special moment. It's a moment that we in the Academy look forward to every single year. As president, you know, I miss the opportunity of being able to congratulate students, to be able to shake their hand, to be able to experience that spirit, that elation with them on the day of graduation. I miss that a whole lot. I think all of our faculty and staff miss that tremendously. But at the end of the day, you know, in the future, we're going to have to be very creative and to help our students celebrate, to help them celebrate their achievements. But they need to know that all faculty, staff, and students are tremendously proud of them. What they've gone through, no one else in the history of the university has gone through. They'll look back on these years and say, you know, didn't have our commencement, but we did it. We were it wasn't face to face, but we survived it. And we could look back on it now, or we could say, you know, we're members of the Alumni Association. Let's be creative. Let's do something. Let's have a reunion every year. You know, to look at possibilities of repeating a commencement for those graduates. So there are all sorts of different ways that we can be flexible. But right now, it's important for our students, our graduates, to be as understanding and as supportive as possible. We feel it just as much as they do, and we miss that opportunity. But at the end of the day, it's very, very important for them to be around to plan something for the future as well.
So you were here on University Drive a year ago. In another year at least, what would you desire to see happen for the university and the environment in which the University of the Bahamas is operating?
In a year from now, I would really like to see the University of the Bahamas create an environment where there's both face-to-face and online teaching and learning, online collaborative. I would like to see the university create learning communities on the different islands throughout the Bahamas, where courses might be delivered online, where I think that, you know, we have maximized all that we have learned from going through this period of the pandemic. And so a year from now, I would see that the university's campus, and I know we always say that the University of the Bahamas considers the entire country its campus. I think in a year from now, I would like to see that become even more of a reality. And where we're having a lot of support from the government and from the corporate sectors in making that a reality. Like I said earlier, the strength of our country is going to be determined by the strength of the university. And so if we cannot build up our university and strengthen and support our faculty members, then it's just going to take the country that much longer to get to where it needs to be in terms of its own sustainable development and growth.
Every leader, I think, should go through periods of reflection. What do your periods of reflection reveal for you in terms of your leadership of the institution and your connection and involvement with faculty, staff, students, alumni, administrators, and friends of the institution? What do your reflections reveal?
That's a very broad question. I think that there's a common element. And the common element that I have experienced is that people do not respond to change and innovation as well as I would like to see people respond to it. I think more of us need to engage in dialogue. I think more of us need to have open minds. I think more of us need to be flexible in our thinking and to see possibilities. I think that for many of us, we tend to be locked in a box in the sense that this is how it's been and this is how it's supposed to be. I think that as a country, we need to, as a people, we need to engage in more dialogue. We need to be more open-minded. We need to see the possibilities, or we need to hear other people propose possibilities. And we need to be willing to be innovative and try things. It doesn't matter how many times you fail on something, because as long as you're determined to succeed, as long as you're determined to make a difference, as long as you're determined to grow and develop, there is always a way to make it happen. And this is something that I have said to some of my colleagues, that, if we have a goal, we have an objective, and if we try one way and that doesn't work, then we try another way. If we have to go over the wall, under the wall, around the wall, or whatever, but there's always a way. You never give up. You never give up, because you have to keep going and you succeed.
President Smith, I want to end on a national note.
Okay.
We are in a period of disruption, and disruption is never easy. But even in an era of disruption, there are opportunities. What is the opportunity that the Bahamas has right now?
The opportunity that we have, I think, is that we have a growing university. We have a young university. And our university can actually create a niche which is global, which is globally recognized. We have the opportunity to build from the ground up. And in order to do that, you need to support the institution. Yeah, you mentioned disruptions. In every growing institutions, you're always going to have disruptions. The fact that we went through Hurricane Dorian, the fact that we went through the pandemic, those are just two of the disruptions that we've experienced in the past 4 years or so. We had a brand new board of trustees. Some mistakes were made initially when we transitioned. Some mistakes were made when the government transitioned. But those are behind us. Those are all parts of the growing process that we go through. But I think that if we can come together and engage in dialogue, we can come together and talk about where we would like to see things move for the university moving forward. Where we are now, you always have to measure things by where you are and understand where you need to go moving forward. So I would say that basically understand, there are going to be disruptions, but some of those disruptions are all a part of the progress. They create the challenges. When those challenges are created, then the solutions are there. When the solutions are coming, we're becoming more and more innovative. And that's the direction we need to keep going into.
President Smith, thank you so much for joining us again here on University Drive. I think it's been a really compelling and interesting conversation. Do you have any wrap-up comments?
I would just like to say really that one of the things that we have to be very, very careful about when we change leadership, or whether it's the government or whether it's the university, there has to be some historical knowledge, there has to be some continuity, there has to be a level of understanding. And I would encourage people to, at the university level as well as at the government level, to take into consideration the fact that the work that was done before is equally as important as the work that's to be done in the future. So you have to take the whole picture into consideration, not just part of the picture once you start office. That's all I would say.
Well, thank you. Very poignant note to end on. We have had as our guest, President of University of the Bahamas, Dr. Rodney Smith, and I'm your host, Tamika Lundy. Join us again next week, same time, same station here on University Drive. Thank you and good afternoon.
University Drive is a production of the Office of University Relations and the Communications and Creative Arts Academic Unit at University of the Bahamas. All rights reserved.